Hello everyone, my name is Molly and I am a master's student at the University of Winchester. Today I'm going to be speaking to you about ear cropping in dogs. So I'm going to begin by briefly explaining what ear cropping is and what the laws in the UK are, what the point of ear cropping is and which breeds are most affected, the welfare consequences of cropping, the prevalence of ear cropping within the UK, the influence that social media and the media has, and if there is a solution. So what is ear cropping? Ear cropping is a surgical procedure that is performed in puppies usually aged between 7 to 12 weeks of age. It is the surgical removal of the ear flaps involving the reshaping of the external ear by cutting through the cartilage, skin, blood vessels and very sensitive nerve endings. The ears, in some cases, are then taped and splintered to facilitate healing in the desired shape. In the photo on the left you can see a dog without cropped ears and on the right a dog's ears after being cropped. So now I'm going to briefly explain the legality of ear cropping within the UK. So under Section 5 of the Animal Welfare Act 2006 for England and Wales, ear cropping is illegal and referred to as a mutilation. This is unless performed by a vet for medical reasons. This procedure is also illegal in Northern Ireland and Scotland under similar legislation. However, a loophole in the law means it is not illegal to sell a dog with cropped ears, have a dog's ears cropped abroad, or purchase and import a dog with cropped ears from another country. Vets are also not legally required to report suspected illegal imports. However, there is guidance on the process and they are urged to fulfil professional duties and report any suspected animal welfare violations. In terms of the only legal option for a dog to have its ears mutilated is very occasionally if part of the ear is needed to be removed due to a tumour or a non-healing wound, for example. This is called a penectomy and can only be performed by a registered vet or veterinary nurse. The outcomes usually look very different to those that have been cropped and normally only necessary for one ear. So what is the point of ear cropping? Ear cropping was historically performed for the prevention of damage during hunting and fighting and to reduce the risks of ear infections. It was also suggested the necessity of cropping specifically to prevent tearing in breeds with pendulous ears, aka floppy and long ears. While some evidence suggests that breeds with pendulous ears have a higher risk of otitis externa, which causes inflammation to the ear canal, in comparison to those with erect ears, specific breeds have a higher predisposition than others irrespective of their ear conformation. One study in 2006 by Barbosa et al. Found that Cocker Spaniels, German Shepherds and Poodles are more susceptible to otitis externa, and there is a higher prevalence in Golden Retrievers and West Highland White Terriers, none of which are breeds that traditionally have their ears cropped and vary between floppy and erect ears. Another justification for cropping is that it improves hearing. This idea dates back to the 50s, where Jansen wrote an article on the cropping of dogs' ears and claimed it must improve a dog's power of hearing, as an erect, cup-shaped ear is more capable of receiving sound waves than an oral opening covered by a pendulous flap. He compared this to wild animals and how they require all their faculties in the struggle for existence and that they are not encumbered by flaps over their ears. It is clear that whilst many advocates still now make the suggestion that it improves hearing in dogs and reduces susceptibility to otitis, that supporting evidence is lacking. In terms of cropped ears for aesthetical purposes, this is not a new concept, and again referring back to Jansen 1951, the author claims that it undeniably improves the appearance of the animal and claims this to be a well-grounded reason for trimming a dog's ears. I will at this stage emphasise that while Jansen is in support of ear cropping, that is under the assumption that cropping will be performed under anaesthesia, and has a completely different opinion when done by a breeder. So which breeds are most affected then? A study by Norris et al. Identified the most common breeds associated with ear cropping are American Bulldogs, Dobermans, Cane Corsos, other types of Bulldogs and Mastiffs. Referring back to the previous slide, these are not breeds which are generally predisposed to ear infections, which leads to the question then as to why are these breeds the most affected? Within this study, it was identified that some owners had a particular preference for this particular appearance, linking again back to Jansen 1951, who said that it undeniably improves the appearance of the animal, and in short, as stated by the RSPCA, it makes dogs appear to look tougher and more intimidating. If we look at Cane Corsos, for example, pictured on the right-hand side, and I referred to a Cane Corso Pets webpage on Google, which looks to be an advice page for prospective owners. The first pro to cropping, and it is stated that the number one reason for cropping is their appearance. It claims it gives their breed the iconic gladiator look, and says that it helps them score better in shows as their head shape is unique and important to judges. Point 2 and 3 briefly cover hygiene and ear infections, and again point 4 goes back to the cane corso signature look. Again, focus on appearance rather than any health benefits, and the same can be said for the cons, where they are described as looking scary and intimidating and focusing more on public perception rather than the effects that it has on the dog. This is only one pet page highlighted. However, it must be noted that any prospective owners looking for this breed of dog may be influenced by pages like this. Clicking the second link down on Google, I came across another page called Trending Breeds, which also states that cropping has become a standard practice to enhance their intimidating appearance. In the study by Norris et al., where it is identified what preference for this particular appearance may influence decision making, one owner wanted a dog that looked that way, i.e. with cropped ears, but was aware that this procedure is illegal in the UK and so imported. So what are the welfare consequences of cropping? Starting with the effect it has on communication, the PDSA and RSPCA claim that it affects their ability to communicate efficiently. However, in 2016, a review of medically unnecessary surgeries in cats and dogs said that there was no sufficient evidence to suggest cropping affected communication. In contrast to this, a blog published on the British Veterinary Association page by a second-year veterinary student claimed the behavioural consequences of ear cropping are shockingly apparent, and that body posture and facial expressions are cues that can provide predictive indicators regarding mood and emotional states. That the loss of a key communication tool such as ears limits ability to express emotions, which can lead to behavioural responses that humans and conspecifics may consider unexpected or difficult to interpret, in turn leading potentially to dogs being exposed to situations they may find challenging and increasing their exposure to discomfort and distress. An article in 2018 called Communication in Dogs discussed how dogs rely on both tail signalling and ear positioning to effectively communicate behaviour problems, particularly in close-range social interactions. They are able to obtain and deliver information regarding their inner state not only through facial expressions, but also through their ears. The role of ears in facial processing has been rarely investigated, although we do know that there are differences in ear positioning dependent on their arousal state. For example, ears that are flattened or pressed back might indicate a frightened individual, or on the contrary, kept forward is associated with attention and approach. It is important to note the exact ear positioning for dogs is breed specific. Therefore, when a dog has its ears cropped, the results generally indicate approach, interest and alertness, and restricts the dogs from being able to display appeasement or fear. Another welfare concern is pain associated with the procedure. Discomfort caused during healing from retaping and bandaging, and also from the procedure itself if not performed by a licensed vet and given anaesthetic. Quite commonly, these procedures are carried out as a DIY procedure at home. These procedures require a lot of aftercare and can become infected easily or cause blood loss. There is also a risk of the desirable shape not being achieved and the shape of the ear being distorted, leading to further operations. The use of anaesthetic also has risks of its own. There is also the potential of a puppy being affected by this traumatic event. A dog's socialisation window is a developmental period where they can become accustomed to new experiences between 4 to 16 weeks of age. For puppies, having their ears cropped, this is a period where they would be affected by the pain experiences, which could lead to the reduction of exploratory and social behaviours. It may also influence pain sensitivity throughout their life. So what is the prevalence of ear cropping in the UK? In 2021, the RSPCA reported a 236% increase within 5 years on the number of reports they received regarding ear cropping. A survey in 2021 from the British Veterinary Association revealed that 58% of small animal vets have seen dogs with cropped ears, and 61% believe there is a considerable rise in the number of dogs with cropped ears than seen in previous years. The most commonly presented breeds were Dobermans, American Bulldogs and Cane Corsos. The only recent study to my knowledge regarding the population of dogs with cropped ears in the UK is one by Norris et al. 2023. This study looked at electronic health records using data from Savsnet's network of over 500 UK veterinary practices, identifying between 2015 and 2022 132 dogs with cropped ears. Rates peaked in 2021. 63.6% of these dogs were imported commonly from other countries such as Romania, Poland and Ireland. The limitations of this study, however, were that the identified cases were from veterinary practices who were actively monitoring the situation, therefore unlikely determines the true levels of ear cropping within the UK. So what influence does social media and the media play? The most recent case to consider is a Warner Brothers film using a dog with cropped ears in DC League of Super Pets. The British Veterinary Association, members of the Veterinary Animal Welfare Coalition, the Foal Group and Kennel Club all wrote to Warner Brothers expressing their disappointment that Ace the Bat Hound had ears that looked cropped. Although this is an animation and they are trying to emulate Batman's iconic cowl, it is a film aimed at impressionable young children and with not only a huge publicity campaign promoting the film internationally, but also toys and merchandise that are already available in the UK, this could further add fuel to the ongoing trend of dogs with cropped ears and take the seriousness away from the realities of a procedure that is detrimental to a dog's welfare. They have encouraged parents to discuss serious welfare issues with their children and advised that filmmakers and advertisers use the guidelines provided by the British Veterinary Association for using pets in advertisement in order to promote happy and healthy pets and encourage avoidance of unintentionally showing animals which have suffered for a trend. The guidelines include, but are not limited to, a focus on the 5 welfare needs framework and encourages responsible messaging by ensuring animal imagery in pets that all welfare needs are met as far as possible. The notion that media has an impact on the purchase and trend of specific breeds has been established in other cases, such as the rise in Dalmatians after the 1985 re-release of 101 Dalmatians. The annual number of new Dalmatian registrations rose from 8,170 to 42,816. This dog movie star effect has been found to last many years after a film has been released. Celebrities and social media influencers also play a major role in the influence of trending pretty much anything. In the population-based study by Norris et al. 2023, they highlighted the influence of celebrity-owned dogs with cropped ears and the influence this may have on followers and fans to be a part of this new trend. Concerns on celebrities trending this issue have also been raised by the RSPCA. The British Veterinary Association were also made aware of DIY dog ear cropping and ear straightening kits being sold online last year. The president of the British Veterinary Association wrote to eBay UK, Etsy UK and Amazon UK to flag this issue. All 3 agreed to remove the products listed. Amazon, however, don't have any current plans to remove straightening kits from sale. So to summarise, I have discussed that it is an illegal practice in the UK, that it is a surgical procedure that reshapes the ear. It's historically used for hunting and fighting, with some claims that it prevents ear infections, although dogs most commonly cropped are not affiliated with any evidence of this. No current evidence to indicate it improves hearing and predominantly performed for aesthetical reasons. Welfare consequences affect communication and the procedure is deemed painful and unnecessary, and that between films, the online sales of DIY cropping kits, and the trend of cropped ears seen within the celebrity culture, that these could be major impacts on the reasoning for the prevalence of ear cropping increasing so much. So what is the solution? The government have committed to working with the Cut the Crop campaign, which has been backed by many reputable organisations such as the Veterinary Nursing Association, the RSPCA and the PDSA, just to name a few, for the closure of legal loopholes. After responding to a petition which reached over 100,000 signatures, the government has said they will engage with stakeholders, including the RSPCA, to understand the extent of ear cropping and breaches to the current law in this country. In May 2021, DEFRA published its Action Plan for Animal Welfare, which identified a number of areas where there would be legislation which included banning the importation of cropped puppies. It is unclear, though, when this will come into fruition. In the study by Norris et al. 2023, many of the participants were under the impression that the cropped appearance was a genetic trait, and only 58% recognised that some breeds have their ears and tails surgically removed after birth, thus highlighting the importance of education on this illegal practice. Due to legislation being difficult to enforce unless someone is actually caught in the act of cropping, and the fact that having a dog that's got its ears cropped is not illegal, one vet proposes a ban to owning dogs with cropped ears. Therefore, anyone owning an unregistered dog with cropped ears after the ban came into effect would then be committing a crime and held liable. I believe it is also important to further research within this field to not only fully back up the limited research on the effects of cropping, but also on the actual prevalence of ear cropping, to enable evidence-based and data-informed interventions and legislation change. I would suggest continued accountability to celebrities and influencers who are partially responsible for creating trends, and the use of animals in films and ads to be held responsible for their portrayal. To make it common practice for vets to report every dog with cropped ears they come across. Thank you for listening.